As someone who is very familiar with the city of Fayetteville, Georgia, here are 10 things that I love and hate about living here. One thing that I absolutely love about Fayetteville is the southern charm that you can find here. This is definitely like the epitome of what it's like to experience that southern charm that is often talked about all around the country. Fayetteville has done such a great job of preserving that kind of hospitality and the culture and even in the buildings, the historic buildings here in Fayetteville, you can really see that sense of history. And so that aspect of Southern living is definitely very noticeable here in Fayetteville. What's up, y'all? My name is Victor with Atlanta Suburban Living, and we put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the cities around Atlanta. This next thing that I love about Fayetteville is that the people are very friendly here. This is a very family friendly kind of area. This is not like the city of Atlanta where you kind of get those urban cold vibes from people. Fayetteville is a very small town in Georgia, and people are very neighborly and very friendly. And so that's definitely one of the highlights of living in this area. It's still super common to hear people say things like thank you and please and you're welcome, and people holding the door for you. This is all very common in Fayetteville, Georgia. And so definitely something that I love about this city. The next thing that I love about Fayetteville is the new Trilith movie studios. This is something that I would have never foreseen coming to Fayetteville, this small town in Georgia. But in the last 10 years or so, this movie studio has come to Fayetteville and has just exploded the economy here. The city of Fayetteville is thriving because of this movie studio. Not only have they built the movie studios there in Fayetteville, but they've also built like a kind of live, work, and play area right there next to the studio. So there are a bunch of shops and restaurants there associated with the studio, some condos, I believe, as well, that you can live there in the Trilith area. And so this part of Fayetteville is definitely something that is not only new, but it's very different than the rest of Fayetteville. You know, think of Fayetteville as like a small Georgia town, and then the Trilith area as like this booming economy that has affected Fayetteville a lot. But the Trilith area, it looks very different than the city of Fayetteville itself. Thanks to Trilith Studios, there is a ton of homes there as well. And so this has really been a very important part of the development of Fayetteville. Another thing that I definitely love about Fayetteville is how affordable the homes are here. The average home price in all of Metro Atlanta continues to increase year after year. I believe for all of Atlanta, we're somewhere around $550,000 average sold price for a home, but in Fayetteville, you can find homes well below that average mark. And so this partly has to do with the fact that it's on the southern side of Metro Atlanta. And so the more popular area is the northern part of Metro Atlanta. So because Fayetteville is on the southern side, you can see that homes cost a little bit less. And then also it has to do with the fact that it's not super close to the city of Atlanta. That buffer or that distance that you find between Fayetteville and Atlanta also means that homes are more affordable there. And so being one of the best suburbs in all of Metro Atlanta, the fact that you can still find affordable homes in Fayetteville is absolutely something that I love about living here. And then the public schools are also very good here in Fayetteville. Sometimes you see in the southern part of Metro Atlanta that the public schools are not quite as good as the northern part of Metro Atlanta, but this is not the case for Fayetteville. Fayetteville has excellent public schools and is a really big draw for a lot of the people who move to this area. If you're looking for an area that has great schools and you want to buy a home in an area with great schools, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. I'm always happy to help. But there are definitely a lot of great aspects of living in Fayetteville, but there's also some downsides of living in Fayetteville. And we want to make sure that you have a balanced view of all of these cities that we talk about. So let's talk about some of the negative sides of living here in this city. One of those things that I hate about living in Fayetteville is that even though Trilith has all of those shops and restaurants, it's really just a small portion of Fayetteville. The rest of the city doesn't really have a lot of shopping and restaurants. And so this is definitely not something that you find here in Fayetteville. Having the best restaurants in Metro Atlanta or the best shopping is not something that Fayetteville is known for. And then another thing that I hate about Fayetteville is that the demand for homes here is very high. I mean, and part of that has to do with because it is such a great city, the great schools, the affordability, but the demand for homes in Fayetteville means that there is a lot of competition among people who want to buy homes here. In the last couple months, the average days on market for a home in Fayetteville has been 12 days. 12 days is not really a long time. And so that definitely means there's a lot of demand there, especially when you consider other cities on the south side of Metro Atlanta. If you want to be on the south side, typically you don't have as much buyer demand for homes, not as much competition. But Fayetteville is one of those cities that has a lot of competition. So when we compare this to other cities, for example, Stockbridge has an average days on market for listings of 20 days. Jonesboro has an average days on market of 24 days. And Fairburn, another city on the south side, has an average days on market of 23 days. So to see Fayetteville with 12 days on market means that there definitely is a lot more competition there, only second to the most popular city in all of the south side of Metro Atlanta, which is Peachtree City, which is the highest demand area. So Fayetteville is like the second most in demand city in the south side of Metro Atlanta. Another thing that I hate about Fayetteville is the infrastructure here is terrible. The power lines that are all above ground, not every home being able to have high-speed internet, or the amount of homes that have septic tanks instead of sewer. Like, you can tell very quickly that Fayetteville experienced much more growth than they were able to handle, which means that the infrastructure is not quite up to par with being able to handle all of the people who live here. Another one is that everything is very far in Fayetteville. And this kind of comes with the fact that it's a small Georgia town. You know, you're not going to be able to walk to the grocery store. You're not walking distance to really anything if you live in Fayetteville, except maybe your next door neighbor. And so the fact that it's a small town, when it's very suburban slash rural, even in some parts of the city, means that you're going to have to drive, you know, maybe 10 to 20 minutes to get to a grocery store. So, or even to shopping, again, 10 to 20 minutes. So this is kind of a downside of living here in this city. And then another thing that I hate about living here is that the economy is relatively small. Even with the Trilith Studios, you don't have a lot of big employers here in Fayetteville. There aren't a lot of like mega corporations in Fayetteville. Very often people who live in Fayetteville have to drive to another city for work. And so this is certainly a downside of living here. So there are definitely a lot of good and bad of living in Fayetteville. If you want to check out a tour of the city, you can check out this video here where I walked all around the city and talked about some of the highs and lows of living in Fayetteville.